today I would like to say talk about my organization, which is perhaps little known in Ireland or elsewhere. So this is a kind of a promotion, but at the same time, I would like to ask you to have a good understanding of what is happening at the borders. And I chose the title as, say, you see, Global Network at the Borders. Why? Because customs is increasingly, around the world, is increasingly acting as a global network. So this is why I chose that. And then, say, you said about borderless society, but then border still matters.
Yes,
and borders do divide, and customs connects. So this is the function of customs administration. Well, first, I have to make a quick, say, introduction of World Customs Organization. It is an intergovernmental organization specialized in customs matters. Well, it was established in Brussels in 1952. And its mission is enhance effectiveness and efficiency of customs administration and to facilitate and secure the international supply chain. So essentially, we provide infrastructure of global trade. We have 176 members, so covering almost all countries, and collectively process over 98% of global trade. Other 2% just to say implement what we establish as standards. Well, perhaps I should explain a little bit about its relationship with Europe, because this institution is called International and European Affairs. Yeah. And well, it is really like us, because our, say, origin is really European. And it was in 1947 that the Committee for European Economic Cooperation was established to, say, discuss about recovery after war. Mm. And there are two committees established. One is Customs Committee. At that time, already GATT was there. Mm. So based on the GATT rules, can Europe develop customs union? That was the, say, challenge at that time, and well, this committee became WCO. And another committee was economic one. This is to manage the Marshall Fund. And so this is a predecessor to the, say, OECD. So our origin is very much linked to Europe. And actually, our initial members, 70 members, are Europeans, including Ireland. Thank you for this. But I should thank for the foresightedness of Irish leaders at that time. And then, say, we quickly became very global. And now we have 176 members. In terms of the EU, of course, 27 members are all of our members for quite a long time. And interestingly, European Union per se has, say, acted as observer for quite a long time. But in 2007, it became a WCO member. Of course, it should imply the, say, modification of our convention. So it is subject to that ratification by all 176 members. But on a de facto basis, EU is now our member. So just before Lisbon Treaty, we were foresighted. And for the European countries, they see WCO as an outreach platform. So they can, say, project their EU model to the global world. And of course, they can be connected to outside world. So for Europe, it is a very important institution. Well, I'd like to talk a little bit about customs function, because customs is not, say, just at the airport, say, open your bags and search, but the real function of customs at the origin was rather revenue collection. It's a, say, fiscal function on import taxes. But very quickly, those import tax customs duties are used to protect domestic industry. And this is the thing that the WTO has been negotiating to reduce that tariff. And then we also protect citizens from inflow and outflow of hazardous goods, such as drug trafficking, firearms, and nowadays increasingly counterfeiting and piracy. But at the same time, we facilitate trade because each country needs to enhance their national competitiveness. And trade facilitation will, say, determinantal for the, say, investment climate. And then finally it came, especially after the September 11th, 2001, trade supply chain security came. But it's not only security anti-terrorist. At that time, by that time, say, customer has been focused more on import side. But then after that, say, there was a paradigm shift that the customers should see from the origin to the destination of the movement of goods. So they have to look at the export side and also transshipment as well. So it's our attention has focused to, say, entire global chain. So this is a huge change. And then, say, well, in order to respond to the concern of civil society, we have to take care of the protection of environment. And we set the environment, protection of environment as last year's theme. Well, so now we have a wealth of customs function. Then now, what is the WCO's main activities? We are essentially a standard-setting organization. So we develop standards for custom procedures based on best practices around the world. The most, say, known one is harmonized system. It is about tariff classification. If you trade, you have to identify what are the goods and what customs duties are applied. But for that, you need that classification of goods. And if you join the WTO, the first thing to do was to adopt this WCO harmonized system. And then we have revised Kyoto Convention. It is about the simplification and harmonization of custom procedures. And this is a major tool for trade facilitation. And then after 2001, we have developed a safe framework of standards to secure and facilitate global supply chain. So these are the major standards that we have produced. Another activity is promoting international cooperation. I mean, it is about sharing information, but also sharing best practices. And in that manner, we can act as a global network. But for that, we need to, say, set the level of capacity of all our members at a, say, level playing field. And that is where we need capacity building to help our members to implement WCO standards. We have several programs. One is Columbus program. We sent our, say, diagnostic teams to more than 100 countries to identify gaps between the reality and WCO standards. And we make recommendations what kind of action plan is necessary. And then we also have a PICAR program because, say, our secretariat is rather small. So we need allies, and we use universities, and we cooperate with them to address the management issue. Because, say, custom technical area is important, but after all, for capacity building, we have to address management issue. And this is why we are developing the cooperation with the universities. Of course, we have to, say, take care of fragile states, like Afghanistan. And, say, the basis for any capacity building activity is integrity, fight against corruption. Because that will, say, damage the customs reputation and confidence in trading community. And that will hinder customs to discharge its responsibilities. So integrity is the basis. And for that, we are based in Brussels, but we take regional approach. For each region, we divide 176 members into 6 regions. And for each region, we establish regional office for capacity building, and we recommend ownership approach at the regional level. So this is what in a nutshell, we are doing. Now I'm moving to the global challenges that I perceive for customs. Firstly, it is about, say, protectionism, say, potential protectionism coming from the current difficult economic situation. And what is necessary is to support the global trading system, and then supply chain security and facilitation. And perhaps this is, say, near to your, say, justice area. We deal with health, safety, and protection of society area, environment, IPR border enforcement, or, say, fighting against transnational organized crime. So these are the areas that I'm going to speak. First, about protectionism. Well, in September 2008, say, this was the origin of global financial crisis. And then, say, we did a very quick survey with our members. What do you observe at the borders? And they reported back that they see our trade partners, business, suffering from the drying up of trade finance. So the recommendation from the WCO is to help trade, to, say, actually move the goods with eased trade finance. For example, say, deferred payment of customs duties, or, say, easing guarantee conditions. Those, say, small things, but it can send a very good signal to trading community. And then reduction in customs revenue is what has happened. Well, drop in trade volume, and I talked about difficulty in accessing trade finance. But also, we observed increase in fraudulent activities, which is normal. And many customs administrations are under huge pressure for revenue collection. And what has been very much of our concern is that the rise of potential protectionism. And bearing in mind those problems, we issued a communique to G20, because in the past we used to work with the G8, and still we are working, but now G20 is rising as, say, global governance structure. So we communicated to G20, and we recommended 3 things. At this time, rather than setting an, say, unrealistic revenue target, you have to expand the trade by facilitating trade. And ultimately, that will, say, enlarge your tax basis. So in the longer term, this will be beneficial. But for the time being, you have to help trade to facilitate the movement of goods. This is the first one. And secondly, we have to continue capacity building, because many countries perceive that export is the solution. But if all countries want to export, there should be some countries that import. And for the import, especially in emerging economies or developing countries, if the custom procedures in those countries are not user-friendly, that causes a problem. So it is in the interest of exporting countries to continue capacity building support for emerging market and developing countries. So that was the second one. And thirdly, I recommended continuing monitoring. And luckily, say, those 3 recommendations were incorporated in the G20 communique. And well, I received, say, thanks letter from Gordon Brown in his capacity as chair. So in that way, we communicate and interact with the G20. And now later, say, G20 leaders start to say that now, say, crisis is over and we are under the, say, recovery, which is fine. But it has been supported by huge fiscal stimulus package. And at the same time, what is different from the 1930s, say, experience is that trade has been kept open. So this helped that quick recovery. So our mission is to continue that, say, open trade and, say, to avoid any protectionism, because when the stimulus package was there, there was some, say, fear that there might be creeping protectionism included in that. But we would like to make sure that the customs at the borders, custom procedures do not constitute trade barriers, say, under the disguise of protectionism. And what we are recommending is fair and efficient revenue collection. Not say enhance, but say enhance capacity for efficient and fair collection is necessary. So we've come up with a revenue package. It is a collection of standards to ensure efficient and fair revenue collection. And we say stress trade facilitation, and we continue to help customs modernization. Well, I said that trade has been kept open, so we have to continue to support the global trading system. And in this connection, we support WTO Doha Round negotiations because customs is very much, say, included in that process, and we support early conclusion. One area, specific area, is very pertinent to customs, which is trade facilitation agenda. This is one of the, say, well, this is the only new agenda item in the Doha development agenda, and quite often it is seen to bring the biggest economic gains. And both developed and developing countries are supporting, so we see it as a win-win situation. Well, for this trade facilitation, what is necessary? It is about the streamlining border procedures, and customs is, say, central, say, element. And we have standards available. I talked about the Revised Kyoto Convention, and most of the WTO proposals are, say, drawn up or inspired from WCO standards. So once that, say, negotiation is concluded, well, they will use WCO standards, and even, say, WTO negotiators and Secretariat, Pascal Lamy continues asking me that once negotiation is concluded, it is the WCO to, say, help implementation of this agreement. What we need, and we are increasingly getting through the Doha Round negotiation, is political support and mobilization of donors. And we get more, say, money available. And it is a very good theme for aid for trade. So we appreciate that Doha, and we support this Doha Round. But in a sense, that global trading system has been, say, some say, undermined by the regional integration. Of course, I'm not talking about the European Union, but there are many, say, free trade agreements, proliferation of free trade agreements. And that complicates trade, because each free trade agreement has its own rules of origin, and which is rather different from, say, agreement to agreement. So can we envisage convergence of rules of origin, rural area, and that will have implication on procedural area as well. So the WCO has started to, say, compare several rules of origin and try to, say, look for synergy with the global standards. So this is what we have started. And of course, we need to provide capacity building. For example, European Union is pressing for the economic partnership agreement with African, Caribbean, Pacific countries, but they don't understand the rules of origin. So what we do is to, say, help them understand this very complicated rules. So this is the area that we are doing in support of a global trading system. Now I'm moving to the second area, that is supply chain security and facilitation. Well, security has been high on the agenda right after the September 11th in 2001. And many international organizations in maritime area or, say, air transport area came up with new standards. And the WCO also joined that effort to establish new rules called Safe Framework of Standards. But we say that security should be accompanied by facilitation. Because our major principle is risk management. We should get information at an early stage, say, concerning those goods, And we have to analyze the risk of those goods concerned. And if we find that there are high risks, of course, we'll have inspection. But if the risks are low, then we let that, say, goods to flow smoothly. So in that sense, security and facilitation should be integrated into risk management approach. And this is about our safe framework of standards. It has two pillars. One is custom business partnership. If we can identify compliant and reliable business, then why not? We ask those business partners to manage their own supply chain from security point of view. And less intervention for high compliant operators should be there. So we provide tangible benefits. And this is called authorized economic operators. And using the standard, EU has also developed its standard based, say, in compliance with the WCO standards. So in Ireland and in other, say, 26 countries, they are now, say, in the process of establishing authorized economic operators. And the future is really depends on the success of this program. But what is important is that for those authorized economic operators, the real benefit is mutual recognition. If, say, Ireland authorizes this, say, traders as compliant, then, say, your trade partners, for example, United States, or, say, Asian countries should, say, regard or approve those traders as compliant. And in that manner, from exporting countries to importing countries, you can facilitate trade. So this is the concept. And currently, say, we are pushing for this mutual recognition. And US has already got that mutual recognition with, say, Canada, New Zealand, and Japan, and other countries. EU has already done that mutual recognition with Norway, Switzerland. Perhaps this must be the easier part. But they are now, say, finalizing mutual recognition with Japan very shortly. And, but still, they are negotiating mutual recognition with the United States. So this is what we are pushing for. And this risk management approach is, say, in a sense, against the US Congress approach of 100% scanning law. Because in 2007, US Congress has enacted a law requiring mandatory 100% scanning of US-bound cargo at the point of export. So if Ireland wants to, say, export your goods to the United States, from 2012, you have to scan all goods in your country. So this is the law. And, well, it is, say, very cumbersome. And, say, from the cost implication, it is not really feasible. So from the, say, outset, the WCO has, say, raised a voice together with the European Union and other big trading countries against this law. And say the alternative should be the risk management approach enshrined in the safe framework of standards. And we, say, took the, say, approach of constructive engagement with the US Congress. So we talked to congressmen, senators, and last November, Secretary Napolitano of US Homeland Security flew to Brussels to meet me. So I explained why, say, 100% scanning is a bad approach, and as alternative, we have a viable approach, which she understands very well. And in December, say, she made a testimony at the Senate committee. But then, of course, say, there is political, say, constraint. So what she could, she was able to allude to was the extension of the implementation date of 2012 for 2 years, 2014. But say, what I advised her is that this is not sufficient, because for customs administrations, in what direction we should go? We should go in the direction of 100% scanning, or should we go for the international cooperation for risk management? So we should still continue to say raise our voice together with say European partners and Asian partners. So this is a political issue that we envisaged. Now I'm going to the say third area. This is about the protection of citizens from say inflow and outflow from hazardous goods. First, environment. Now the protection of the environment is very high on the agenda. So last year, I decided that the theme of the year 2009 for WCO should be customs and environment. What contribution customs can make in preserving environment? And we have worked very closely with the UN environmental program to develop green customs initiatives. And well, it is about the enforcement of trade provisions of mutual multilateral environment agreements. There are many agreements, starting from endangered species, or say ozone-depleting substances, or hazardous chemicals and hazardous waste. So this is what we have done. And we say did exchange of information. We have developed a special say network, information network called EnviroNet, which is connected not only to all customs but also environmental agencies, national ones, and of course UNEP and other say international organizations. And we carried out joint operations. For example, for the hazardous waste, we connected 64 countries, Europe, Asia, and Africa, because quite often with the growing, say, with the increased, say, level of standard, many manufacturers find difficulties in getting rid of the hazardous waste. So instead, from Europe, those hazardous waste are exported to, say, those developing countries in Asia, Africa, or Latin America. And that causes huge health and safety problem in those countries. And through this joint operation, we were able to identify containers just, say, being exported from Europe full of, say, e-waste, electronic waste, full of, say, used computers, or say used electronic appliances, and because those days, those computers or even mobile phones contain their, say, metal, which is very much dangerous to, say, health of human health. So we were able to, say, identify and seize those containers. And in the developing countries, say, from the information of, say, suspicious goods, movement of goods, they were able to get, say, seize some, say, containers containing those hazardous goods. So we should continue to, say, raise the awareness, and well, we should think of how we can use this, say, our capacity to, say, protect against climate change. Well, I talked about ozone-depleting substances. It is really, say, at the borders, customs detect illegal trade of ozone-depleting substances. But this is about fungus and substitute. Can we do similar things at the border enforcement? And now there is a talk about border tax adjustment. And, but the border tax adjustment is a very controversial issue, because it could be used rather, say, protectionism, say, the concern is there. But at the same time, say, protection of environment is rather overriding agenda for compared to trade. So we have to find a balance if we go into that road. So this is what, say, we are collectively thinking of as our, say, duty. And then IPR border enforcement is another area. Well, in the past, when we talked about counterfeiting and piracy, it was about, say, brand, say, shirt, or, say, luxurious goods. But nowadays, say, criminal organizations just, say, found out that this is a very good tool because, say, punishment level is low. So the risk for organized crime is low, whereas, say, benefit is high. Because nowadays, with the technology, you can, say, produce many counterfeits on, say, almost everything. And if it goes to fake medicine, that is a huge problem in Africa. Or if it is about fake, say, spare parts of automobile, it is scary. So this is a real, say, threat, direct threats on health and safety. But I see there is lack of awareness. There is, say, little awareness that this is a serious criminal behavior and economic loss. Well, of course, for the producers of genuine products, this is economic loss. And normally, those counterfeiters don't pay tax, so for the, say, state as well. But at the same time, this will be funding for organized crime, and this will be this will have hazardous health hazards caused by users. But consumers tend to think that, oh, this is a good, say, deal. But that kind of awareness, or say, lack of awareness, is not helpful. And then quite often there is lack of enforcement legislation, because more than 70% of seized counterfeits are carried out at borders. It's customs. But quite often customs is not sufficiently empowered to do that, or empowered to, say, develop partnership with the trade, because it is rather difficult to see if it is fake or not. So you have to have good, say, communication and collaboration with business. Or, say, customs lack officers at the borders, lack operational capacity, and is there political support or even business support? Sometimes I question that. So these are the challenges. So in order to respond, WCO sends diagnostic missions to identify gaps for countries for the IPR protection, and we organize joint operations to improve that coordination, because it's not only customs. You have to coordinate with the police and, say, judicial bodies. So that kind of coordination is necessary. And cooperation with the right holders and sharing of best practice is necessary. And for that, we provide technical assistance and capacity building. Well, of course, we have to fight against the traditional transnational organized crime, such as illicit drugs. Because transborder crime is a huge challenge for WCO and customs, but opportunities for organized crime. It is really source of illicit profit. But the major seizure point is at the borders. It's not only, say, counterfeit goods, but also illicit drugs. More than 70% of national seizures are at the borders. And we have customs enforcement network, which connect all customs administrations. It's a communication network and a database for customs seizures. And using this network, we carry out joint operations. For example, say, at the regional levels, drugs in Central Asia, or say globally, money laundering. Money laundering for customs is about cash courier, cash smuggling. And so we do our best, and cooperation with the police and, say, justice is really core. One specific area is about tobacco, because WHO has a framework convention on tobacco control. And I understand that in Ireland you have many, say, smuggling of cigarettes, not necessarily towards the, say, internal market, but, say, Ireland used as a transit point. So now, say, they are developing protocol of illicit trade in tobacco products, and we cooperate in developing protocol. And once protocol is finalized, we are, say, we should cooperate in terms of implementation. Finally, I'd like to talk about the, say, vision, customs in the 21st century, which was adopted in 2008 collectively by our members. And this is the way forward for customs. And there are 10 building blocks. I'm not going to all 10, but what is important is for better international cooperation, we promote globally networked customs. Customs should be connected, and with that information exchange, we should act as a global network. And then for better coordination at borders, we promote the concept of coordinated border management. There are many ways of coordination, well, cooperation, collaboration, and communication. Some administrations merge between customs and immigration, but then other administrations keep the traditional separate bodies, but then having a more coordinated mechanism of setting up, say, committee, or, say, having more, say, single window approach or one-stop border service. So, those approaches all require political support because you need to designate one leading agency, and then there might be inevitably tough war. So how to avoid and getting coordination is really a challenge for this coordinated border management. And then for better business compliance and mutual benefit, we promote a custom business partnership, and we adopted that this year, 2010, for WCO is a year of custom business partnership. And we should remain relevant, regionally, and indispensable. This is the way to achieve, say, customs mission for a better world. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much.